It's a rather wet Friday morning, and we are pleased to welcome you to the AM show. My name is Sweetie Abochi.
And I am Benjamin Akapo. It is a wet Friday morning, and guess what? ECG paid me an unannounced visit this morning. Right on the back of the rain, it was gone. So it was a bit hectic getting here, but we're here.
Yeah.
We're here to do what we do.
Do it for God and country.
Oh, yes, indeed, we shall.
Right. So before we get into the lineup for today, I just have one word to share with you in my
Is that your proverb for today?
It's not really a proverb. It's more like a caution. It says, "Poto like focus on you.
Okay.
You know, mind your own business.
Zufiasem.
There's a lot of clutter going on, and sometimes, in the course of life, things happen, and there's so much noise that, engulfs you. You have to find what's really important to you and focus on that. Don't get distracted by what's happening on the left or the right. Just your trajectory, where you want to go, your objectives, and focus on that. Over to you.
It also reminds me of the fact that everyone's journey is different.
Yes.
Just as another proverb, that's not the proverb I'm giving you today, but it says,
Yep.
The fingers are not the same.
Yeah.
In other words, this person excels at that, does that. That is why you shouldn't count other people's blessings. Count your own. Count your blessings, name them one by one.
Yeah.
But my proverb for you this morning, it reminds us of our communal lives in Ghana, which we are fast losing to the adaptation to and adoption of Western and some other cultures. It is this. Ejebiwa, ejebitiasi. Ejebiwa, ejebitiasi. In other words, Eja is father. So one father dies and another one is there. It's like in our communal setting, you may lose a father, but there's an uncle, there's a sibling, there's someone else who will take up the role. So very important, we mustn't forget our roots. Ejebiwa, ejebitiasi. It also points to the fact that we must live for and help one another in dire circumstances. That's my proverb for you this morning.
Right. So, of course, in a bit, I'll be serving you the news, and then we get into the news review. Today, Executive Director of Ghana Environmental Advocacy Group, Elizabeth Aluava, would be our guest for the news review. And then Muftau Nabila Abdullahi will be here to present a segment on AM Sports, bringing you everything going on the All-African Games and more.
Well, speaking of the All-African Games, we'll definitely be talking about the Black Princesses and their feat. But from there, I'll be sharing with you my blunt thoughts, and I'm going to be focusing on two things today, Agenda 111 and LGBTQ. Want to know? Stay for that.
And in our big stories today, there's an unending fracas on whether President Akufo-Addo should assent the anti-LGBTQ bill into law. We know Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, on Wednesday furiously adjourned the House. What does this really mean for governance? Our guest today for that conversation is Bobby Banson, who's a lawyer, Dr. John Osai Kwapong, CDD Fellow on Governance, Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director of African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. They'll be joining us for an in-depth conversation on what this bill means to us. Should he assent or should he not assent?
And then from 9 a.m., we cross over to Lagos in Nigeria for a UBA event. We'll be telling you about that later on the show, as we also encourage you to participate on this program with us, because what are we without you? We'll allow you to have your say.
Well, that's what we have for you today, this wet Friday morning. You want to stay with us, especially for Benjamin's blunt thoughts and all the other conversations coming your way. Welcome aboard the AM show. This is the AM News, the first news bulletin on Joy News TV. Now let's get into the details. The National Identification Authority says it will extend the Ghana card registration process to children aged 0 to 14 within the country in the coming months. This age bracket was not registered onto the database because the NIA said it wanted to avoid conflict within the existing database collected from children aged between 15 years and above. Now, speaking at a public lecture held at GIMPA on the role of digital identification in socio-economic development, Executive Secretary of NIA, Kenneth Ajiman Atafwa, said the expansion of the registration process reflects the NIA's commitment to building a comprehensive and inclusive national identification system. Rejoice Semefakpesu has more in the following report.
The special registration exercise is targeting children aged 7 to 14 across the country. The aim is to ensure that young Ghanaians have access to formal identification documents from an early age to facilitate their participation in educational, social and economic activities. Speaking during a public lecture, Executive Secretary of the National Identification Authority, Kenneth Atifa, said the exercise will take place in basic schools and some senior high schools across the country under the supervision of teachers.
No, we are not going to require them to come to NIA office and queue and all of that. But yes, we are going to go to the schools. Wherever children are congregated, we will go there. Kindergartens and primary schools and middle schools. JSS and some SSS even. We will go to those places, but we'll be working with schools in a very systematic, moderated manner. So if this month we decide that we are going to Alajo Primary School, whatever, we go there, and for that 1 month that we are there, some of our staff are at other schools, but we will begin with, let's say, class 1. The teachers and the parents will know that we will dialogue with them, and they will know that these 2-3 days are reserved for class 1 and class 2. And parents, when your children are coming to school, please ensure that they have these documents. When they bring them, say a day before, teachers will examine them, make sure. So if there are gaps, we will advise the parents. So on the actual day, the gaps would have been addressed. If it is 10 children we can register in a day, after class, we will have enough officers so that children will not be distressed. Peaceful, calm process. They will not be kept waiting and angry. So we manage that well. Parents won't have to wait for long to take their children home. We will be methodical, systematic, and conscientious in how we do this. It will be done as humanely as possible and remove stress. But yes, we'll go to wherever children are in order to do it.
The limited registration exercise will also cover Ghanaians living abroad and will be done in collaboration with the Foreign Affairs Ministry through online registration portals. These portals will facilitate the capturing of biometric data of eligible citizens living abroad to enable them to access various services and participate fully in national development efforts.
Registration of Ghanaians abroad is the same. We will do that in conjunction with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. They are by law required to do it on behalf of the Republic. So NIA will train them and provide the equipment and support them to do the registration. All the necessary arrangements are in place. We're just waiting for the release of funds to commence that process. I think that will happen also in the next couple of months.
The National Identification Authority has encouraged all eligible Ghanaians living abroad, children aged 7 to 14, to take advantage of the upcoming registration exercise to obtain their Ghana cards. Detailed information regarding registration centers and required documentation will be provided in due course. Rejoice Semefakpesu's report, read to you.
The Ministry of National Security is creating awareness in schools across the country about the security and safety of students. According to the National Security, government is working tirelessly to ensure the country's borders are secured and safe. Speaking at the sensitization exercise, a senior officer at the Ministry of National Security and member of the committee See Something, Say Something team, Kester Osei, indicated the move is a proactive step to improving the country's security ecosystem.
Since the launch of the See Something, Say Something 2 years ago, the team has been engaging communities institutions, and individuals to create awareness. According to the national security, the move is a proactive step to help deal with potential attacks, abductions, and other unforeseen circumstances. Hestor is a senior officer at the Ministry of National Security and member of the See Something, Say Something campaign.
If we know what's going on in neighboring countries, even recently, there have been some abductions of students, and they didn't know, of course. This is a proactive measure by government to ensure that we're safe, citizens are safe, and we report suspicious activities to the authorities. This is not to cause any fear and panic, but just to a proactive measure by government to involve citizens, in our security. We have an acronym called SALUTE, S-A-L-U-T-E, that stands for ways to help you notice and describe or explain some of the things that happen. The S stands for the specific features of an individual. If you see somebody robbing, if you see somebody doing anything bad, that or something that doesn't cause or causes instability to the society, you should be able to pick out the person's specific features. A is for activity, what activity is the person doing? L is for location, U is for uniform, T is for time, and E is for equipment. So if we're able to get all these things well reported, the number to call is 999. It's a toll-free number. You don't need credits, you don't need data. So we're urging all Ghanaians to stay vigilant, stay safe, and if they see something, they say something.
Program coordinator in charge of the campaign, Akosua Dankwa Intim Secretary, took the students through the security awareness session.
This is a proactive measure initiated by government. We don't want it to happen before we go firefighting. Ghana is the only country, by the grace of God, who hasn't suffered any attack yet. That does not mean we are out of the woods. We can be attacked at any time, even though we don't seek to create fear and panic. But the truth still remains. We are not in normal times, so it's become very important that we take our personal security very serious. Look out for suspicious activities. If you are in a neighborhood, a community, and you see a foreigner or somebody come live in the area, and you suspect the person's activities, please do not hesitate for us to know, so we can come in and take charge of the situation.
Headmistress of Holy Child School, Linda Apia, indicated how helpful the encounter with a student has been.
The information given on creating the awareness on security measures to be taken when we find unknown people around, I believe will help us and the students very well. They've been given, or the awareness has been created amongst them that whoever they find on campus that is not familiar, they quickly have to raise an alarm in order for us to get protected.
Some of the students spoke with Joy News.
We are very grateful that they have been here. We've learned a lot. They taught us an acronym SALUTE, which will help us to look out for some things when we see odd things happening around, how to be careful and scrutinize situations so that we can give proper information or accounts about things that happen. We are very grateful because we've learned that we must be safe, and if you want to be safe, it's basic. It starts from us and everyone. Yes, thank you. My name is Jennifer Selasipao.
The national security says government is tightening the borders of the country to ward off any potential attacks.
Let's now go to the central region, where they've recorded a huge decline in maternal deaths. The region, through its network of practice, according to health authorities, works with prayer camps and other traditional sources of birth delivery to keep the numbers down. At the Health Performance Review in Cape Coast, Central Regional Director of Health indicated the Health Directorate had to deploy more time and efforts to achieve the results. There's more in this report.
The 2023 Health Performance Review in Cape Coast celebrated the achievements by the health actors in the region and also to tackle the challenges they were confronted with during the year under review. Central Regional Director of Health, Dr. Marion Okowusu, indicated how the health actors masterminded the achievements in the health sector that culminated in the region being adjudged the highly performing region in Ghana.
For maternal mortality ratio, we declined from 90.9 per 100,000 live births in the year 2022 to 71 per 100,000 live births in the year 2023, and this is a positive achievement. So when you reduce maternal deaths, it's positive. So the deaths are coming down. It shows that we are moving down, but it's positive, and so we are happy about it. To ensure that we sustain this gain, the Regional Health Directorate has introduced a project called the AIMS, the Accelerated Actions to Improve Maternal and Newborn Survival. This is a program that includes engaging stakeholders, visits to Nakaba camps, visits to traditional birth attendants, engaging the people or the general public through radio sensitization, mass media campaigns, organizing training and capacity building programs for the staff, mobilizing the resources we need. The holistic assessment review for all the regions in Ghana took place in the months of February and then March 2024. And this was assessing the 2023 performance. For Central Region, the assessment was undertaken by Bunu East Health Team. And I'm pleased to let you know that Central Region has taken the comfortable lead for the whole of Ghana at an enviable mark of 3.93 out of 5, highly performing.
Central Regional Minister Justina Marigold-Hassan called for a concerted effort in further improving the key performance indicators.
The government remains unwavering in its pursuit of universal health coverage as a social protection tool and foundation for sustainable development. We are committed to mobilizing resources, fostering partnerships, and creating an enabling environment for a more efficient, resilient, and people-centered healthcare system. Together, let us forge new paths of cooperation, resource mobilization, and strategy actions plans to drive faster progress through effective networking and stakeholder involvement.
Chief Executive Officer of the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital, Dr. Eric Kofinjedu, was upbeat about the networking interventions put in place to enhance quality and access to healthcare in the region.
With the advent of technology and introduction of electronic health records in our entire health industry, it should be possible for a consultant sitting in the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital to deliver consultancy services to the Winneba Trauma Hospital. And if in physical, we have to move there, our consultants have job plans that have assigned them various district and regional hospitals that they can go and deliver services.
The Health Directorate pledged its commitment to improving upon the performances to further reduce the maternal mortalities in the region.
Now, from my election headquarters, the National Democratic Congress's parliamentary candidate for Efutu, James Kofi Annan, is on a one-man protest against the decision to award mining license to a mining company by the Minerals Commission to mine in some 3 communities in the Central Region. The deal, when finalized, would see the mining of lithium and gold carried out along the Ayensu River. James Kofi Annan argues the mining activities would have dire consequences on the livelihood of the residents in the rural communities. Peter Senu has more in the following report.
James Kofi Annan, this is not the first time he is opposing the attempt to issue mining license for mining of lithium and gold in a reserved site in the Gumua East, Gumua Central and Efutu municipalities. He argues that when the Minerals Commission goes ahead to issue the mining license for mining in the Ramsar sites, the main source of water supply to the Efutu municipality and beyond would be gravely impacted.
Last year, I led a protest to protest against the granting of mining, specifically lithium license, to Green Metal Resources to mine in the Ramsar site in Efutu, Gumua, and also in the Winneba Abortory hunting grounds. That problem is yet to be completely gone. I have once again cited the application of another company called Green Metal Resources. Green Metal Resources has applied to the Minerals Commission for a mining license to mine lithium and gold in Atachado and Ochrekun communities. Atachado and Ochrekun communities are communities in close proximity with the Ayesu River. The Ayesu River is the only source of water through which the Ghana Water Company pumps its water to its treatment plant to supply water to the people of Efutu, Gomwa, namely Gomwa East, Gomwa West, and Gomwa Central, part of these communities.
He added residents in these communities largely dependent on the Ayensu River for irrigation, farming, and water for domestic use. Currently, the Ghana Water Company draws its water for purification from the Ayensu River. According to joining sources, the current turbidity is already high, let alone be polluted by mining activities. James Annan is advocating for a no to mining campaign in the Domiabra, Atechedo, and Ochrekun communities.
It's a no thing. In fact, it cannot even happen. I will take you to the communities I'm talking about, and you yourself will see for yourself whether there's any land to reasonably mine anything like lithium or gold on it between these communities and this town. So it is a no thing. And this is Ghana Water Company. You are seeing Ghana Water Company here, and this is where they are drawing their water sources. So how do you then mine and affect the river? It shouldn't even happen. I am going to exhaust all legitimate means to resist it.
Joy News can confirm that the residents in these communities largely depend on the Ayensu River for their dry season farming activities. Peter Sanu for Joy News.
Away from that, 1 out of every 3 women have experienced some form of domestic violence in their lifetime. This is according to data from the Ghana Statistical Service. Executive Director of the Economic and Organized Crime Office, Mamiya Tiwa Adudankwa, has encouraged victims of abuse, especially women, to seek assistance and report incidents about their attackers. Speaking at the ACT at 25 public event, the Yoko boss emphasized the need to break the silence on abuse and seeking for help. No one should suffer in silence.
Put your hands in despair. Find a way around it. And I can tell you, there are a lot of people who are willing to help.
The ACT Foundation, a non-profit organization, has for the past 25 years been dedicated to providing compassionate care for vulnerable individuals. To mark its jubilee, the foundation brought women leaders from various fields together for a conversation on the theme Women Speak Leadership, the Power of One. It served as a platform for prominent women in Ghana to share their experiences and insights, inspiring others to navigate the complexities of male-dominated industries with resilience and determination. They also shared experiences and addressed the struggles of managing both work and personal life. Drawing from her own experience in a male-dominated field, she encouraged women to pursue their passion with confidence and determination, defying societal expectations and stereotypes.
Whether you're a man or you're a woman, whatever that you are going through, whether challenges and other things, there are a good number of people who are prepared to help you. So if you are in a relationship, abusive relationship, you need to report to the police, or you need to report to somebody. Sometimes you are afraid, you fear. You shouldn't keep some of these things to yourself, and that there's help somewhere else. Leadership is leadership, whether you are a man or you are a woman. The challenges are the same and the concept is the same, just that women have our own challenges. For instance, you are a mother, you are a wife, you have to do other things. Having said that, most of the things that we have to go through and you need help, ask for help. And that if you are given opportunity as a woman, you need to work hard, you need to prove yourself, you need to think about excellence, you need to think about care for others, you need to think about humility, accountability, transparency. And these are the values that will drive the organization that you lead. I want to encourage women that when you have other women working around you, hold their hand, build them up. Sometimes they are afraid. Some of them don't even know the potential that they have. It is up to you as a leader to encourage them, identify certain potentials in them, and then help them to nurture and build upon those potentials. If you're in a male-dominated institution like mine, it still doesn't matter. You still have to work hard like anything, and you don't have to be afraid.
Other women leaders shared their thoughts on empowering women.
There is something amazing happening for the female gender, make no mistake. That the work of Auntie Angela and Co. has not been in vain. That the work and the contributions they've made to social justice, to equality, to fairness has not been in vain. That all of us are more empowered. Tell me something. Years ago, women were ashamed even to go to a separation, to a divorce, for example. Women were too embarrassed to talk about being a single mother. They wouldn't even talk about it. They wouldn't even share their periods when they walked into work. Today, we have single mothers who have raised amazing children.
Even the best moments in your life, even when things are going well, you stop and then say, is this, should I, can I, why me, right? There's always that self-doubt that creeps in, no matter what or who you are.
Angela Dramina Abuaje, who is the executive director of the AC Foundation, highlighted the organization's mission to provide hope and assistance to women navigating through adversity. She underscored the significance of hearing from prominent women leaders whose journeys serve as inspirations for others.
We are very grateful to God for these 25 years of working with women and children primarily, and some men who have faced abuse, helping with legislative reform, advocacy, training several organizations, personnel in many sectors to understand sexual and gender-based violence and domestic violence issues. Today's function was to bring women together, because women is our focus, who are leaders in their organizations, public institutions and civil society institutions, and even the private sector, to tell us how have they survived. How have they made it? What kinds of values have they held on to that have made them succeed where they are and even still working towards other goals?
As Women's History Month continues, the AC Foundation remains committed to curbing violence and abuse against women in Ghana. Through their initiatives, they provide vital support services and safe spaces for victims to seek refuge and find avenues for healing and empowerment.
On that note, we're wrapping up for the AM News. Benjamin Akakbo is standing by for the news review. You want to stay with us for his blunt thoughts and a myriad of conversations coming your way on the AM show.
Welcome back on the AM show, and it's time now for us to get into the newspapers, and I am excited about my guest this morning. I've always had discussions with her via Zoom. Today she joins me in the studio, but I'll keep that secret to my chest for now. I'll reveal that in just about a minute. But of course, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helping us to bring you this segment every weekday morning, and today is no different. It's a wet morning, but that doesn't change the fact they're offering you, if you're a man, prostate screening for free. And if you're a woman, fertility screening for free, absolutely free. All you have to do is make a beeline for any of their branches here in Ghana. And there's good news because they are all over the country. Let me start with here in Accra. They're at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. Then there's Kumasi, Kronom Abwehia behind the Angel Educational Complex. In Takrade, Anaji Estates is where you can find them. Back here in the Greater Accra region, they are in Tema Community 22. Then there's Techiman Hansua and Esiaman Zama. Their call lines, two of them. Here we go. 0244 867 068 or 0274 234-321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. And here we are in the studio, and I am joined by Elizabeth Alua. I don't know whether I got the middle one right. She's Executive Director of the Ghana Environmental Advocacy Group, and she is my guest this morning. Oh, don't you look lovely with that background, especially as you're an environmentalist?
It's beautiful, yes.
It is. What do you make of our new studio?
It is really nice. It's my first time coming in person, so I didn't know what to expect.
Okay.
Yes,
so you saw the old one, which is on the other side of the street, virtually, but this is the feel of the new one. And we've made a new home. Here we are.
New things to come, great things as well. It's great to be here.
Good. So before we get into the papers, a few things that come to mind. Do you think we are experiencing doom? So this morning, for example, you know when it rains, 2 minutes cry, but you do me light. And in the last few days, I've had the issue of, I think it may be in the process of getting resolved, not having light because I couldn't purchase at the vendor and I couldn't buy on the app. You know, some meters have some problems. Happened to me last year, happened to me this year. But this morning, after just a few minutes of rain, my lights went out. Thankfully, I had prepared, you know, from last night. But I don't know what your situation has been in respect of that.
Well, fortunately, where I am, we haven't had it. And it's also, there's a standby generator, so I may not have even felt it.
Oh.
So that's, you know, you have to prepare for what happens.
Yeah. I mean, my neighborhood has not been one of the worst hit. We get it from time to time. Yeah, I think 2 days ago, yesterday at a point, and in about 3 weeks, it's not been so bad. But other communities I know are frequently, you know, it's off 11 hours, 12 hours. Do you think there's this conversation out there? Is it doomsday or is it something else? What would you term it?
So, is it doomsday or not? What does it matter? The fact is we don't have electricity when we need it. And companies, you know, companies are already going through a lot. And if they can't have their people working when they should, individuals can't use electricity for whatever need they have. And in this time of extreme heat, imagine having I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and she's staying in the heat with no air conditioning, no electricity,
you will not sleep.
Exactly.
You will not sleep.
So we don't need to dwell on nomenclature. It is not good that people should be experiencing this at this time, and the solution has to be found for it.
Are you surprised we're back here?
Well, you see, you can't do the same things over and over again expecting different results. We had been told over and over that however much we are making from electricity, like whatever is generated in terms of revenue, is not covering the cost of it. Meanwhile, there is a lot of wastage as well, right? So you can't expect to be running losses on a monthly basis, and then all of a sudden your problems are gone. They won't be gone. And it's going to be even worse as more people, you know, start consuming it.
Well, interesting stuff to look at in the papers. Let's start with them, shall we? Okay. And then maybe later on we'll get into other pertinent issues. But maybe, pardon me for this. Before we get into the papers, because of what you do, the advocacy you do, and I was just referencing you to that file shared recently with me and on Facebook generally by Daryl Bosu of Arusha, Ghana. I mean, we've been partners in good things, trying to fight for everything environment for a long time. And I saw something that just broke me. Major highway, right? I can check for where it is. I'm sure if I go on Facebook and look for him, I'll find the specific spot. And guess what? To the left and to the right, for as far as your eyes can see, Galamsey. So in other words, even the integrity of the road is in question because everywhere around it, large expanse of land has been dug out. And people are doing Galamsey live, in living color.
It makes you wonder. I keep saying that when it comes to the environment, when it comes to what's going on, it's worse than a failed state. Because I mean, go to even Libya, even what is it? Cote d'Ivoire, and even Congo. I don't think you have this, right? Right by the roadside, side and side of it, and the road is a public, it's a public infrastructure. People are using it up and down, and right on both sides of it, it's gradually being decimated. You can't even tell whether they've already burrowed under it, and it's just suspended.
Yeah.
And then in the river right next to them, Adam Srem did this.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now, and I'll send the photos. I will send the photos to my director, my producer, so we can splash them, even if not immediately. In the course of the news review, we'll splash them on your screens, and you will see what we are talking about.
It's heartbreaking.
Adam Sremsai took that photograph, and where is it? Shangfang activity at Dadieso.
Yes.
In the western region. That is the place. I mean, you will weep. You will weep. I can't for the life of me. Elizabeth, where are we going? Because, look, we're here today. Maybe we can manage. How about, you see your granddaughter you just spoke about? What will happen to her in terms of even potable drinking water? In terms of what the environment they will inherit will look like? Some of these children now cannot even tell the beauty of a river or a water body because that experience, they can't have it unless they go to some other country.
Yeah. It's mindless. It's mindless. And if you look closer in one of those pictures, there's a school smack in the middle of all the galamsey pits around it. That is even putting those children in, their life is going to be at risk. And when you look around, we don't have to even wait for my granddaughter. Right now, the Ghana Water Company, and today happens to be World Water Day. Ghana Water Company, when you look at their sources where they take surface water for, their treatment plants. I mean, I can't imagine how people see this and they don't ask themselves. If I'm sitting in Takoradi, I'm sitting in Prestia, I'm sitting in Dunkwa, and I'm getting tap water.
Yeah.
This is what is running through it. And it doesn't seem to make a dent. But I don't blame them, I blame leadership. Everything has to happen from the leadership, both traditional and political. And why have we gotten to this point where we have structures in place? We have interior ministry, and right now it's almost like it's terrorism happening right within our country, environmental terrorism.
You've always spoken about that, environmental terrorism. We are being terrorized we're being terrorized and maybe colonized in our own country, environmentally speaking.
Yeah.
It is so sad. I look at it and there are, I don't want to use those words, but nowadays I consider that I am Ghanaian and I have a tinge of regret. I've said that in recent times because I look at what is happening with our misleadership, as I put it. And today I'll share my blunt thoughts on some of these matters. And I look at a lot of the things happening. There's no honesty in leadership. Very few of them are honest and can say the truth, speak the truth. We have a political system that is, you must lie your way through. See black and say it's white. Once our party says it's white, say it is white, no matter what. And I'm talking of all sides of the political divide, not just one. And if we continue like this, it's like that saying, you can't keep doing the same things and expect different results. It breaks me. It breaks me, really. But we'll see how things go. We can only pray. We can't give up.
No, we can't. We can't at all. Otherwise, we might as well, pack bag and baggage and then leave the country for people to come and recolonize. We can't give up.
But another thing, some of the countries that we celebrate today, they were truly born out of circumstances like where we are now, where the people got to a point where they said enough. And I'm not talking about nowadays, you mentioned these things and someone is thinking you are talking about a coup d'etat or some revolution. No. But people were fed up. And they created different systems. And today, we celebrate them. I think we should get to the point where we get past, and I say this respectfully, this NDC, MPP nonsense, and look at leadership that can steer, because Ghana has no business being as poor as we are, as desperate as we are, as IMF dependent as we are. I mean, recently we say we are 67. I look at what are we celebrating? If I were leading this country at some point, I would say we should do what Magufuli and his predecessor, the lady, did. You know, he cancelled Independence Day celebrations twice, and they invested that pool of money into, I think, at a point, roads, at a point, education, dormitories, and all of that for. Because, in essence, what are you celebrating?
Exactly.
You can actually, when COVID hit, the president was in there, fellow Ghanaians. Why can't you have an Independence Day speech, right? From the Jubilee House, with some senior citizens, ordinary Ghanaians, even children from, come there and you have something, but no, there must be chop. Someone's contract is in there for food. Someone's contract is in there for delivering drinks. Someone's contract is in there for tents. Someone's contract in Tisika kakra nipa bidintino. The beje nyema nsese and spend millions. Have you heard how much we spent on the last Independence Day celebrations?
No, I haven't.
I haven't either, but some opepepepe will cry, for sure.
And you know, all those contracts are going to party people.
Oh, yes.
Which is like, it is so bad. Governance has to change. And there's supposed to be, look, governance experts in this government and in public sector. You hear them all over the place, but it doesn't show. They put me on a platform with, you know, Nzima platform with young people from both NDC and MPP. And for the past 18 hours, it's just been this and that.
Yeah.
So MPP is all this, NDC is all that. No, like, what exactly is the function, is the object of this platform?
And this is one of the pictures. Look at this. Dadia, so in the Western region. Everything you see from here is wasteland. And look at that property. And going, look at how far it goes. And I don't know whether that is the school community you were speaking about, but there it is. Look at it. I mean, even around the school has been taken over. To the right, all the way, as far as your eyes can see. And it goes all the way. Can you imagine this? Look at this. Look at this. And of course, we give credit to Daryl Bosu and Edem Srem for this footage that we are actually showing. It's shared with permission from Daryl Bosu. Look at that. Look at this. Look at this. How long will it take us to recover? Look at that piece of, look at the middle belt here. And you see, look at someone's house. In fact, this house could easily suffer a mudslide. Easily. Look at how much they've done. This house is not safe, but it is there. Imagine if a child is playing around there and falls into that. There's no way you'll survive. Even an elderly person, you will not survive it.
We're putting our children's lives at risk.
These are Shangfang machines. Yeah. Look at the number of Shangfang machines. And so, one bukiti, then they'll target you. And you hear all kinds of, I'm sorry, I don't like mincing words, nonsensical comments. And people will come and defend as though you were bereft of thinking. Yeah. Look at that. Look at it. This is Ghana.
You won't find it even in a failed state. In a failed state like Libya, this wouldn't happen there.
Well, I rest my case. And you speak of those contracts right before we get into the Daily Graphic. You know, we have our new documentary out, Empty Plates, the free SHS promise. I don't know whether you've seen.
I have.
Yesterday we even had this town hall on it, among other matters. And mind-boggling. Because you see, you mentioned contracts. There too, when Dr. Clement Apak came, he's on the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. You see a trend, certain entities, which is why they've centralized it instead of, letting it go down to the schools. Because back then, schools were, getting their money, spending it into, and they could also budget according to, and have their own suppliers and everything. When I was in Bishop Herman, that was what was happening. And we had school farms. We were producing our maize, our yam, among other things. We were self-sufficient. At a point, schools could even sell the rest and raise some internally generated funds. We've centralized it because of corruption. Because we want to, and you see some specific entities. There's this entity whose name has, the name of which I've forgotten, which has been supplying mackerel and all that. And you know what they do? A lot of them, if they are supposed to supply 1,500, they'll supply maybe 800 and the rest. But there is evidence to the fact that they are paid for the full thing. Yeah. Some of them are not delivering the quality they should be delivering, the weight and everything. Yet all of this is happening. And a ton of these people, you go into it, they are party people.
Yes.
Are they?
Yes.
Then
Party people are contractors, they are IT people, they are everything, and they are the ones that would get the contract. This is conflict of interest 101. Yet nobody seems to care. You bring it up and it's like, what planet are you from? Like, is this the kind of country that we want to build? Because one party does it, the next one comes, they do the same thing. We are going to keep going around in circles. Technically, ideally, consolidating it and buying in bulk, yes, it makes sense. You can get discounts and stuff like that. But not when, you know, corruption takes 80% of it. And then what really are you, what's the reason for consolidating it? Well, it's a big problem. Well, Nyame has done his bit. He's not coming again to fix us.
What brings you to Ghana?
We're here for the All-African Games. We have one of the players in the Ghanaian national team that we represent. But we're also here to take a look at some talents and to start running some educational programs to help players understand their rights better. Because we see now in football, it's becoming from FIFA all the way down. We all know it's corrupt. So we need to make sure the players understand what their rights are and how to manage dealing with the corruption around them. So we've spent a lot of time just trying to do some player education, and we're about to set up some programs so we can come back regularly, and we're going to set up a system through our podcast called The Football Life, which can be found on Instagram, where players can reach out to us when they have contractual issues or they have problems with their managers. You know, one of the big issues that we see right now, without speaking about any specific teams or any specific players, there are multiple players that have direct contracts to major European clubs. And instead of being able to move forward to get those deals done, the members of the football associations, the various football associations, not just Ghana, this is endemic, you know, this is throughout all of football, we see them interfering, stopping the deals, demanding that the players don't sign agreements because they want to go with so they can get their kickbacks. And that, of course, is a clear violation for regulations. So our job is to educate the players, help them understand, hey, wait, you're a coach. You have nothing to do with my career other than coaching me. It's a conflict of interest for you to be in that position of power and then tell me how to act. Because now I know if I don't listen to you, you're going to remove me from the national team, which, of course, is a blackmail. It's extortion. And so we want to make sure we have a problem. Coach so-and-so is keeping me from being able to take this contract. How can you help me? And then we'll offer them to lawyers to get them legal advice, and we'll offer them general life advice on how to bridge the gap between living in Africa and moving to Europe, which of course is a very, very different environment, a different culture. We see players struggle when they travel because most agents don't travel with the players. They just put them on a plane and say, go. And then if the player does well, the agent gets the money. If the player doesn't do well, they forget the player. We want to help players understand that they need a solid team around them that does not include football association officials or individuals from their clubs, because obviously the clubs have their economic rights and the players have their economic rights, which creates signing contracts. If an agent wants to represent the player and the club, they have to actually sign a waiver that says they're waiving the conflict of interest. Well, how many young African boys do you think even have ever heard the phrase conflict of interest? They haven't. And the other thing we see is, you know, there are a lot of local agents who help these boys from a young age. Well, you know, they bought them boots, they maybe helped pay for their schooling, they did everything they could from a financial angle to help the boys. So the boys feel like they must be obligated to these men. So now I'm a footballer, I've put all the work in, I have the ability to go make hundreds of thousands or to make millions of dollars, and I'm supposed to be beholden to you because you maybe spent $2,000 on me early in my career. So now you can tell me where to go. Players have to understand that's not how it works.
Just a brief question. You mentioned something of interest to me where you said that there are instances where coaches are directly involved and sometimes players find it very difficult expressing themselves to let them go because they feel they might be taken out of a national team or even wherever they find themselves to federations. Are there, or did you find anything that suggests that coaches are directly involved in some of these things because that is getting yourself in conflict of interest?
Yes. So, I mean, I can give you one example right now. Outside of Ghana, because I don't want to make any more enemies in Ghana than I'm going to make already by talking to you. I can tell you in the Ghanaian national team right now, without naming the player or the coach that's doing this, or the administrators, I should say, that are doing this, there's one player in your team that has a direct offer to a very famous club in Europe, a very famous club. The coaches are demanding all sorts of they're making strange requests, let's put it that way, without allowing the player to sign a representation agreement with the agency, and it's not my agency, it's another agency, for the boy to go to this club, and they're making strange requests, things I've never even heard of. And so now this boy, who has an opportunity to go to a very famous club in Europe and make good money, doesn't know what to do. He's torn between his loyalty to his coaches and the desire to fulfill what he wants to do in his career. But we'll go to Burkina Faso now, and I'll say this right now, very clearly. There is a player in the under-17 national team. His name is Aruna Abdullah Ouattara. He could be the next N'Golo Kanté. The boy is an incredible player. His coach, Mamadou Zongo, from the U17 team, has literally blocked every opportunity that we've tried to give him. We have clubs in Belgium, we have clubs in Portugal, and now we have clubs in England in the championship that are all looking at him. So this Zongo coach, who's with the U17 national team, you can look him up, find out this is all accurate. He has gone to the family and threatened the family. If you don't for the national team, if you don't do what I say, I will make sure your son stays in Burkina.
Do you have evidence to back this?
Yes, I have evidence. Everything I'm going to talk to you about, I have the receipts for it, We've even had to get lawyers involved. We've had to make a complaint with the player status committee against the coach himself. But in Africa, when they hear about lawyers, they don't always think that it's going to affect them. They think that they can just dodge it. But when these boys then go to move to Europe, those lawyers can now reach them once they're in Europe, and it becomes an issue for the player. So, but it even goes farther. So now we have, you're going to be out of the national team, we're going to keep you trapped in this country. And beyond that, they threaten them with local magic. And for some people, that's a really big threat. They have real belief in juju. They have real belief in the old gods. These families are trembling. They're contacting us regularly. What do we do? Now, I can't even travel to Burkina Faso because of the security situation. So we have to use lawyers. We have to use media. We have to use political contacts.
There are also those who would suggest that because you also have an interest in it, that's why probably you're saying this. Because the player, you're the one who wants to give the player the opportunity.
Absolutely. And people can say that. I do have an interest. I have an economic interest, but more than anything, my interest is helping give boys an opportunity to play outside Africa. I've been coming here since 2010, I have no problem sitting down with anybody. They can question me about any of my interests. I'm the most transparent person you're going to meet in football. It causes me many problems. I've taken on some of the biggest agencies in the world. I can't mention those agencies because I've had to sign non-disclosure agreements because I battered them in court, and then they wanted to settle with me because they didn't want me to tell their stories. So anytime you want to have a follow-up interview and hit me with the hard questions or have me see players, I have no problem doing that. Skepticism is always important in all things. And there are always 50 sides to every story. But I can sit down with you and I can show you all the paperwork, all the letters, all the text messages, all the history, and say, this is one clear example of corruption.
Okay. Just a quick one, and then we'll wrap up the conversation. You have been dealing with many talents. You say you've been here since 2010. That's about 14 years. Just talk to me briefly about what you noticed about Ghana football about 14 years ago, where it is now, how we can create a path for the development of talents in Ghana.
Okay, so when I first came to Ghana in 2010, I came with a coach from Manchester United named Phil Brogan. He was in their academy. He worked under Sir Alex Ferguson for almost a dozen years in the youth academies. A lot of the young players that you saw coming through at that time, like Danny Welbeck, those were boys he scouted and helped develop. We worked at Essapong Stadium through Coach Isaac Paha, great man, like a real good man. And Phil was so in love with the Ghanaian football. This is a guy from Man United. We were calling Ghana the Brazil of Africa because there was so much fantasy in your game. There was so much joy. You saw boys just like so excited. And now I'm going to say a couple of things that will be controversial, okay? And that's just how it is. It's who I am. Since that time, I've seen now on this trip, I've probably seen about 600 players, all right, somewhere around there, 500, 600 players. The level has come down dramatically. And I think one of the big problems is the academy system here. So now you have these academies, and it's becoming much more like America, sadly. These coaches are worried about developing a team instead of developing players. Where it used to be you'd have 50 boys with a ball, all fighting to get the ball, and then showing their friends what they can do. Now it's pass backward, pass. The four of us, you and me, we could go, we can pass backwards, we can pass sideways. The fantasy's taken out of the game. Now, is it just the Ghanaian coach's fault? No. They're trying to emulate who? They're trying to emulate Pep Guardiola, okay? But not every team can be Manchester City. Not every player can play at Manchester City. And the thing about those guys at Man City, who are those specialists, is that they have all the fantasy in their game already, but it's only used at certain times. We're taking the fantasy out of the boys so they never have it. So I think Ghana needs to get more back to grassroots, avoid this European type of educational system, this American coaching educational system, and start focusing on the boys. Let the boys play freely. They play scared now. They don't play with a smile. If you sometime, we can go to pitches, you bring your cameraman, we'll sit and we'll watch. And I'll ask you how many of those boys are enjoying themselves. And then I'll show you videos from 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and you're going to see a very different vibe with the players. They had a freedom, they had a love, they had a passion. Now they have a fear. So I think Ghana has some of the best athletes in the world. I think you're some of the best natural footballers. But unless you get back to being Ghanaians instead of trying to be Europeans, your football is going to continue to stagnate. We've seen the games, this All-African games. The overall standard, very, very average. It's not like it was years ago. Look at the Nigeria team. That is the most embarrassing team that I've seen in the history of Nigeria. And I've been around Nigeria since 2010. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
A warm welcome back on the AM show. This is the time where I get to share with you my blunt thoughts, unseasoned. It is just the way it is. I say it raw. People don't like it, but it is what it is. The truth is only one. Yeah? So I've titled it today, An Adjourned Agenda and a Display of Power, the Facts to Appreciate. An Adjourned Agenda and a display of power, the facts to appreciate. I'm sure you can deduce from the title that I'm going to be talking about Agenda 111, the agenda, and the display of power in terms of the LGBTQI plus bill and everything happening in between. I could have easily spoken about our currency, which is in a free fall again, even in the grips of an IMF supported program. The cedi is the third worst currency in Africa, one more time, at a point where we're the worst currency in the world. So I could have spoken about that. I could have spoken about Galamsey. I could have spoken about empty plates, the free SHS promise. But today I decided to focus on these two for crucial reasons. And here's why. Come with me. So it's all about the big Agenda 111 debate. And as we go to the next slide, we look at the big agenda and the number of hospitals promised. We're looking at 111. 111. The breakdown: district hospitals 102, regional hospitals 7, psychiatric hospitals 2. Especially in that end, the third end, psychiatric hospitals, we have a huge deficit. Huge deficit. But then we go to the next slide, and then we also contemplate the promise versus the reality. The timelines: April 2020, there was a promise to build 101 hospitals. August 17, 2021, we cut the sod, and in October 2023, 89 hospitals were said to be complete. That is 52%. But let's move forward. The promise was that this would be completed in a period of 18 months, 1.5 years to complete. But the reality, next slide. The reality shows that it's been 31 months since commencement, and the promise of completing the 89 and others have not materialized. 13 months behind schedule. That is our reality. Now, if you look at the next slide, you would look at the estimated cost per hospital. We were looking at $17.6 million. Even if you multiply that by a factor of 10, you are getting what? 170 plus million Ghana cedis. Now the total, and that is even using a factor of 10 because there's more than 13 right now. The total estimated cost, $1.9 billion. So this is a major, major project. But did we need to do it the way we are doing it? That's the question. The next slide will show us something. Then, when you get to that debate, you would hear from the former president, because he says most of the hospitals will not be completed by the time Akufo-Addo leaves office. And let's look at it holistically. It's not just the NDC or the former president who has said this. I mean, if you shine your eye and if you can see anything, you would realize that it's a tall order. Juxtapose that with the Pualugu multipurpose dam and the $1 billion we were supposed to allocate to the completion of that. They can tell you about funding and everything. Has it materialized for you to see? So ambitious projects, yes, but do we have capacity to complete them? My problem, you start and you stop. It's a drain to the national purse. My money, your money, is gone down the drain, just like we did with Saglimi. Okay? So let's continue from there. The government should have built, let's just go back to the last slide. The government should have built a few hospitals at a time. And I agree with that thinking, because bit by bit we can get there. But to do a rush job and not get there at all, you know what the Bible says about starting to build something and not completing? I don't want to use any words this morning, but go and read those words of scripture. Let's go to the next slide. Now, in terms of any elements from the other side, right, the NDC, because we have to look at it holistically. The NDC is also talking about building this and that. In their 2020 manifesto, regional hospitals will be constructed in the 6 new regions and the Western region. That gives you what? 7 hospitals, because 6 new regions created plus the Western region, 7. And then district hospitals will be constructed in districts where there are none. If you add the number of districts, 88 had no hospitals. You get a total of 95. It's pretty close to 111, right? I mean, you add 11 to the 5 less, that's 16. So where are the disparities? Next slide. You would find, actually, there is a slide we have to look at in terms of, we'll quickly get to that slide. Maybe we can just move on to that end slide and focus on that. Because if you look at what has been said by the NDC, they would say that their district hospitals, right, and that's the difference. is going to be based on what we have in the district settings. And that will not come anything close to the 17.6 or so million or 17.9 million that we are looking at per Agenda 111 hospitals, per each one, which would give you the 1.9 billion that I alluded to earlier. So the difference is in the cost factor, and it's like the CHIPS compounds. We have a certain formula. There's a certain process we follow. They all look a certain way based on antecedents, right? So the disparity then would be that, yes, the difference may be 16 hospitals, promising 7 hospitals, 6 in the new regions, 1 in the western region, plus 88 district hospitals. But the difference is in the facts and it's in the figures. It's in the implementation of it. This discussion has come to the fore. I had to bring it to you because guess what? It's not the same. And for the life of me, since 2020, sometimes you must just read between the lines. $1.9 billion. How much are we getting from the IMF? $3 billion. Are we seriously expecting government to get the $1.9 billion to be able to complete this enterprise? That's the issue. So, fact, fiction, or faction, a mixture of both. We'll get to that, but I'll get to that last slide later on. It should have been here somewhere. My apologies for that. But let's also talk about the anti-LGBTQ bill. That whole tug of war, if you like, because it's not a peaceful tussle, let's face it, between the executive arm of government and the legislative arm of government. So if you look at the reality, the number of days since the passing or the passage of the bill, 23. All right? 23 and counting. Let's go to the next slide. Now, if you look at then 2 pending applications for an interlocutory injunction in the Supreme Court, Dr. Amanda Odoi and Richard Delasky. People have had their own issues to do with them. I'm not going to get into that. That's a personal issue. And they decided to go down this road. And some would say for justifiable reasons. It's up to them. That's their own wahala. Now, the Attorney General has advised the President not to take any action on the bill till the Supreme Court decides. And this is where, going to the next slide, this is where sometimes we get a bit, because we all know what happened with the e-levy. 2 suits. But let's proceed. Now, what does the Constitution say on some of these matters? If you look at Article 1067, it says once the bill is passed, notify Parliament of decision not to assent within 7 days of receipt. That is when the President takes receipt of it. And you remember, on 3 occasions, the Clerk of Parliament, nowhere does it say that whatever the option of the President is, he shouldn't even take receipt of it. And that is what some people have said has been disrespect, not just to the Clerk of Parliament, who is on the level of the Chief of Staff, by the way, in case you didn't know that, but to the Speaker of Parliament and the House of Parliament itself. So, Article 1067 says, notify Parliament of decision not to assent within 7 days of receipt of the bill. That has not happened. 1068A says, 8 and A, recommend any amendments within 14 days of refusal. That is the option that the President chooses to go by. Article 1069 says Parliament is required to reconsider the bill on the back of this, if that happens. And then 10610, President has to give his assent to the bill within 30 days after 2/3 MPs support the bill. The MPs have an option. They can decide. The only tricky part will be that because it's been so highly contentious, would a majority or a good chunk of members of the MPP join members of the minority, if it came to that, to get the 2/3? Because neither has 2/3. They are split right through the middle. Next slide. Then you look at the total number of days the President has after receiving the bill. 21. Since the passage of the bill. 21. Next slide. And then you get to what I was referencing, the e-levy. Interesting question. Where do we put candor, honesty, sticking to the facts on the front burner? And why do we keep vacillating? I can talk about Daniel Yaldome level. I can talk about so many examples. Why do we pick and choose? Because when it came to the e-levy, March 29, 2022, it was passed in Parliament. Look at the dates. Pay attention. March the 30th, 2022, the very next day, the minority filed a case in the Supreme Court. And around the same time, Oliver Mose Bakavomawo filed in the Supreme Court, even stopping, if you like, the GRA from effecting those charges. But guess what? So 29th, 30th, 31st, the president had assented to it within a matter of 2 days. 2. Come on. And I go back to the point. Yesterday, I heard the Attorney General, Godfrey Adami, speaking, on our midday news on radio. And I wanted to put certain things to him because he was talking about the processes and some things. I agree, though the other side has also shown that this matter was in court even before the Speaker spoke, had been filed. There are counter-arguments. But my point is, when the President, meeting the diplomatic community, stated that there was a case in court on the 4th day of March, when in fact that actually happened on the 5th day of March with the date on it clearly on the face of the writ. What was Mr. President alluding to? I want to ask the Attorney General that, especially as he was also asking what the Speaker was alluding to when he spoke about the other case. What was the President alluding to? Now, in the next slide, we look at what some people have said. I mean, we've heard from, under Rawlings, this wasn't really, under Kufuor, it came up a bit. We heard his response. We heard from Atta Mills. We've heard from Mahama. We've heard from Akufo-Addo in different points. It is bound to happen versus at the Anglican setting where he said he would go along with what Ghanaians would say. I'm also interested in finding out what the Vice President thinks now that he's leader of the MPP. But the former president has said no religion in Ghana accepts LGBTQ plus activities. The president's secretary has no authority to write such a letter. Parliament is obliged to send every bill to the president, and this is a threat to Parliament as an independent institution. What do you think? What do you think? People say the executive is overreaching, going beyond its powers, becoming overweening. But partly, I blame all of us. Because indeed, we have created an executive that is too powerful. One person appointing CEOs of state-owned enterprises, appointing the IGP, appointing, guaranteeing the appointment because the nominations are made by the judicial setup, and then Mr. President will have to, on advice, approve these people. He can decide not to approve. Too powerful. So as we complain, we should also go back and look at the 1992 Constitution again. Go back to the 2010 Review Commission's work again. Because we can't keep doing this. It's a fan belt. We can't keep doing this and expect different results when we're doing the same old. And in this final one, this is what I was looking for that I could not find, going back to the conversation on Agenda 111. Now, Dr. Nana Ayuefri, a chairman of the Parliamentary Health Committee, says, and he spoke recently, just a few days ago, this is interesting. He says, currently, there are 90 active sites at various stages of completion. When pushed further, he said, we should be able to complete about 50 to 60 hospitals. Now, 60 out of 111 leaves you with a deficit of 51. If you make it 50, it leaves you with a deficit of 61. Reality. Those are not my words. His words. And finally, natural litigation on lands, just quickly, natural litigation on lands in Ghana make implementation difficult. As we go to the next slide, let's just see the next slide very quickly. It's a bit of a mixture this morning. Unfortunately, the slides were mixed up. But then on the LGBTQ angle, I just had to bring that in because we missed that slide. Communications to Parliament must be signed by the President and addressed to the Speaker of Parliament as required by our standing orders. The clerk has been refused to hand over. 3 times he's attempted it. And he's been rebuffed. I have never in this Fourth Republic experienced this. I mean, I'm open to correction. I stand corrected. If you have any instance where there's been a bill and the clerk of Parliament has been held back, prevented, and there was some assumption almost as though because the president had traveled, he couldn't. That is not the process. Let's stop with the hypocrisy. The process is that it can be served. Once is the presidency, it can be delivered, and the president doesn't have to be there. You read the statement, and it's almost as though in the absence of the president, Nana Santi Video too. Anyway, And Roxanne Nelson Dafiamakbo then talks about the fact that no court can injunct a president from performing his functions under the 1992 Constitution. So Ghana 4, this is the tale of the tape. Agenda 111, LGBTQ. Me, I come and lay bare the issues. I leave you to read between the lines. Some people don't like what I do. I don't do it for likability. I don't do it for people to like me. Like me or hate me, I was speaking the truth under Mahama and giving it to him incisively. It will be no different. So let our politicians watch it as they keep making promises. Because if it comes to you and your feet are there and you don't live up to expectation, Ojano, ebe show. My name is Benjamin Akakbo. These are my blunt thoughts shared with you, raw, hot, unedited, undiluted. As always, I pray, in the midst of everything happening, that God will bless Ghana and make her great and strong. Well, thank you very much for staying with us on the AM show. Time now for us to get into our big stories. And the first one we're contemplating has to do with, yeah, you guessed it, LGBTQ plus and everything in between. The tussle between those two juggernauts, arms of government. The executive on the one hand and the legislative arm on the other. But where do we go from here? It's becoming a case of quid pro quo, tit for tat. Wakame with Timmy. And we proceed from there. But what could this lead to, this impasse, this standoff? We discussed those with our guests, starting with Bobby Benson. He's a lawyer. We'll also have a discussion with Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, a CDD fellow on governance, among others. But let me start with Bobby Benson, who joins the conversation. He's a lawyer. Bobby, good morning.
New Year.
Hello, Bobby Benson.
Hello, Benjamin. Good morning.
Good morning. I can hear you. I wish you could just speak up a little bit more for me. I'd be very, very grateful. It's been a while, my brother. Where have you been hiding?
That is why I wish you a Happy New Year.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Happy New Year to you, too. This year, you've hidden from me.
Well, I guess that we are all working towards a good start today.
I see. Okay. I still wish we could get a bit more volume because I'm struggling to hear Bobby Benson clearly. But let's start from the very start. This entire fracas between the executive and the legislature on the back of the LGBTQI+ bill. Let's start with the bill in its current form. I'm sure you've seen a number of things. Some people have spoken about human rights. Others have said the whole bit about promotion and where it could lead us could be a very slippery slope. But let's start from the bill itself. What do you make of it in its current form?
I saw as the bill, it's a bit problematic, to be honest. I think that the legislature should have put them into two categories. Listen, if you say that our culture does not support people who have a certain sexual orientation, and you say that it is not something that it's something they do by choice, and it's a medical condition.
All right, Bobby, if you can hear me, it's still problematic hearing you, so just hold for me. Our technical team will try to get this sorted out so that we can come back to you. All apologies to you. Let me bring in Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, a CDD fellow on governance. Doc, good to have you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Right. And actually, in today's Daily Graphic, something I'll reference you to, you've said a number of things about this standoff. But let's start with the latest developments that we've seen and everything in between. How do you feel about them? There's quite a tussle, wrangle, power play. How do you feel about it?
As I mentioned in my daily graphic piece, it's quite interesting just to see how events have unfolded, culminating in the response from Parliament and all the things that the Speaker said. I feel that the biggest trigger was the letter from the presidency instructing Parliament not to attempt to transmit the legislation. I mean, our constitution defines roles for both the executive, embodied in the president, and Parliament in the lawmaking process. And so Parliament has its job to do in terms of they have steps and processes to go through.
Right.
And once the legislation is passed, they have a duty to then send it off to the executive. And then it is up to the executive to decide what they want to do with a given piece of legislation that has come to them.
And let's just clarify that sometimes too, those bills could emanate from the executive. There are processes where the executive could also bring that to bear.
Precisely. And even if it emanates from the executive, again, once Parliament has dealt with it, they send it to the executive. And the Constitution makes provisions and gives specific powers to the president on what to do once he receives, a piece of legislation. In my opinion, I think that the instruction to Parliament not to attempt any transmission of the legislation was an executive overreach, right? Because, again, Parliament cannot instruct the presidency, quote unquote, what to do, and vice versa. There is a reason why they are co-equal branches of government. There's a reason why there's separation of powers with specific rules and duties for each of those constitutional institutions or bodies.
So that letter from the executive secretary of the president was in poor taste.
Yes, I believe that is sort of what escalated this, impasse between what the president should do with the bill or not. Yes, the president has explained that there are certain extenuating circumstances which is informing his decision to hold off now in whether he wants to give his assent to the legislation or not. And that, for me, is fair. And it could have been left at that. But at the same time, I'm also sure that Parliament felt duty-bound, that those extenuating circumstances should not prevent it from transmitting the legislation to the presidency. So there is sort of a difference in how both arms of government are looking at, the processes and what needs to be done now that that legislation is passed. But now it's reached this crescendo where Parliament is also then, like you said in the beginning, and at some point, for me, the consequences is the relationship that ends up developing between those two arms of government. I'm one person who is not a big fan of politics that is adversarial in nature. And no matter what, the executive and the legislative arms need some amount of cooperation to address whatever key issues that the country faces. And I'm just hoping that at the end of the day, when this is resolved, it will be resolved in such a way that it does not leave a chilling effect on how the executive works with the legislative on important matters. The other thing I'm concerned about then is that you start also drawing the judiciary into some of these issues.
Because now, whichever way the ruling of the Supreme Court goes, one arm is going to feel aggrieved in a way. Those two arms have boxed the judiciary into a tight corner.
Precisely. And it's also not, for me, if there are things that can be resolved administratively, can be resolved through diplomacy, can be resolved through other means besides going to the judiciary, I encourage that, because there are certain issues that when you take it, particularly to the Supreme Court, right? So think about this. Let's say the Supreme Court rules, and says that the bill is, unconstitutional, right? What precedent are you setting? That now before a bill becomes law, you need the Supreme Court to weigh in before the president can give his or her assent? Or what if the Supreme Court rules that, the bill is, you add another layer of complexity. Yes, if Parliament oversteps or the presidency oversteps, no, I don't have an issue with asking the judiciary to sort of step in and give clarity, interpretation to, some powers that have been usurped or not. But how much are you going to draw the judiciary into battles between the executive and the parliament, and what are the implications of that for the lawmaking process, or things like that? At this point, would we now start running on every little disagreement to the court, and you grind governance to a halt when you do that?
That is the precise position we find ourselves in. I'll come back to you shortly, because what you said also brings to mind, I don't know whether any of my guests this morning recalls. I stand corrected, right? I don't remember an instance in this Fourth Republic. Again, I stand corrected. Bobby is on, you are on, where a bill was meant to be transmitted or attempted to be transmitted by the Clerk of Parliament for that person to be impeded on 3 occasions, basically prevented from transmitting the bill, suggesting in a way from the letter of the Executive Secretary to the President that the President is not in and you attempted. I mean, I didn't get that. At no point have I heard anything of that sort. This is the first time. If you've heard of it, Dr. John Osai Kwapong, just confirm for me. Have you ever heard or seen such a situation before?
No, I haven't. And I also stand to be corrected if it has happened in the Fourth Republic. But since I have followed the Fourth Republic politics very closely, I do not recall an instance like this.
Thank you. Hold for me, Doc. Bobby Benson, welcome back.
Thank you, Ben. Is it better? Can you hear me?
I don't know what it is. There's... It's a bit problematic. Let's try again. Can you hear me, Bobby Benson?
Yes, I can hear you, but can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's patchy. Okay, so my team tells me we'll try and reach out to you on a different connection and see whether that will be better. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about this. Let me bring in Dr. Rashid Draman into the picture. You've also been talking about some of these developments. What is your initial reaction to this tussle between the legislative arm of government and the executive arm of government, which are meant to be co-equal, not subservient? What's your take?
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, when I look at the unfolding drama, what it reminds me of is, situations that we have lived in our country where, the court is trying to serve sermons on individuals, and there is a struggle. They go to their house, they don't find them, they disappear, they make it very difficult, and so on. In the case of the executive and the legislature, I don't know if ever in our republic a bill is transmitted to the president in person. I think the bill or whatever communication there is normally will go from the office of parliament to the presidency. I mean, we don't need a president physically to be present before a document can be transmitted.
Were you surprised when you saw that in the statement? Did it shock you? Because I was taken aback.
Yes, it did indeed. I mean, it was quite shocking that we have a whole Jubilee House, and we know over the years, like you said, this has never happened in our republic. That bills and communication after communication have been transmitted to the presidency. You know, I mean, you don't need a president in the country or out of the country for communication to happen between the legislature and the executive. It just signals for me the deteriorating level of relationship between the two arms of government. Look, right from the beginning of this 8th Parliament, because of its character and nature, some of us have said over and over that we need, find a way to build bridges, to build consensus, not only between the majority and the minority in the House, but also between the executive and the legislature, given the fact that, this is not the 7th Parliament where we have Right Honorable Michael Kwe as Speaker of Parliament, who is from the same stock like the President. We have a completely different situation where, unlike, what we have seen before, the Speaker of Parliament can stand up to a President. If they are from the same party, they will have some conversation, and if there are any issues to be ironed out, these are ironed out.
And that was a point I was going to make shortly. I'll come back to you on that, because another question on my mind is, again, would the Speaker of Parliament be behaving the way he is now if the NDC were to be in power? That's another conversation. But just hold for me, yes. Dr. Draman. I need you to hold for me briefly. Let me bring in Bobby Banton, and respectfully, Dr. Draman and Dr. Osai Kwapong, is because Bobby Banton has to move on to something else shortly. Okay, so I'm told we've lost Bobby Banton again. So this is proving problematic this morning, pretty problematic. Let me come back to you, Dr. Draman, on that point.
Yes, on which point?
On the point about, you were just wading into that. The Speaker. Yes. The 8th Parliament is peculiar because we have a Speaker who is on the minority side. And, well, he's Speaker of Parliament. He shouldn't really take sides. But he comes from the minority stock. And you have the rest of the majority in there. And I was asking the question, do you also get the feeling that maybe if it were the NDC in power now and this thing had come up, maybe he would be acting differently?
Yes, I think so. I think so. However, knowing who the Right Honorable Speaker is, if you recall, even when his party was in power and he was a senior person within the ranks of the party, there were occasions when he disagreed with the president and made it public. So there might be the likelihood that perhaps if he was pushed the way Parliament was pushed on this occasion, even if it was NDC that was in power, he would have maybe behaved the same. But
so you think NDC on that he is a man of principle, and that very likely he would have stuck to his guns.
Very likely, but if the NDC was in power, I'm sure there would have been so many other channels of having conversations with the president, right, through all the structures of their party and so on. And maybe you wouldn't see, unless maybe those channels failed him, we wouldn't see this kind of situation blowing up, in our faces in public.
Let me ask you this. Looking at the tussle, and these are questions I'll pose to Dr. Osai Kwapong as well. So, Doc, please take note as well. There is the moral question. E-levy, side by side with this bill. The e-levy within a period of 2 days, the 29th day of March, 30th day transmission and everything going. By the 31st day, even with 2 suits in the Supreme Court, one from the minority seeking to stop the entirety of the process, and then by Bakavomawo to prevent the GRA from actually, going ahead, actualizing the tax, the levy. Mr. President signed it within a period of 2 days. Now, you know what the Constitution says about the 20-plus day period, and if he's not in favor, vetoing it, transmitting back to Parliament, Parliament making amendments and communicating back to him, and the fact that they could, with 2/3 majority, also follow through on the process in certain ways. The moral question is there. Different situations, or is it a lack of candor? E-levy vis-a-vis the LGBTQ plus bill. And then again, the question of human rights that has come in. What do you make of it? Those two angles, what do you make of them?
I get the impression that it looks like we, in our governance kind of situation, sometimes we are not guided very much by maybe the core principles that are embodied in our constitution, but rather we are cherry picking, and I think that, Benjamin, our leaders have to be bold enough. If you disagree, say you disagree and say so, and let the processes take their course. That is the only way that we can build our democracy. There's nothing wrong with the president, strictly following the Constitution. He has a right under the Constitution to say, I will not sign this bill, and he has done that before. And the Constitution gives him the power to say why and so on. But
in this instance, he's left us in limbo. He will not sign. He will not veto it. And he's left the whole situation in limbo.
Yeah, exactly so. And you see, it gives credence to what many are saying, that, is it because of the pressure from the international community? Because we saw his finance minister just days after the bill was passed by Parliament, coming up with all the scenarios, the negative scenarios that could happen financially to our country if this bill is signed into law. So many are saying, is it the financial consideration? If it is, maybe the president should tell us, so that we don't, live in a situation where it looks like we are not, strictly following the Constitution that has brought, all these leaders to power, and the Constitution that they all swore to, to protect and to defend. And Jonathan, for me, the worrying part of it, as somebody who works very closely with our parliament and many other parliaments, look, over the years, for more than 25 years, we go around different places. I'm currently in Kenya.
Right.
This is, a very vibrant parliament here, and the issue of private members' bill is very, very common. It's a daily kind of affair. Over the years, you go to many places, and they ask you, so how many private members' bills have been passed in your parliament? Zero. Ghana noted, with the stature that we have democratically, across the continent, and then we got to a point where in the seventh parliament, Right Honorable Makukwe, always, we have to give him a lot of credit, for being bold and for making sure that, he brought this power back to parliament. Regrettably, we see a situation in the case of this bill and in the case of the two other bills that the president rejected. We see a situation where Parliament is not united. I don't know whether they are not seeing that the power of the institution is being taken away. Because, look, a very, very bad precedent or precedents are being set. We can wake up and get another president after the next election. And, if there's a bill that is not convenient to the president or the party,
right,
they could simply ride on all these things that have happened in the 8th Parliament.
Right. So it's a bad precedent, you say. The presidency is cherry picking, and it's a bad precedent. Just hold for me. Let me bring in Dr. Osai-Kwapong on those 2 points. The moral question, e-levy, Mr. President signed it with dispatch. Sharp, 2 days. That's what it took him. In this instance, he's decided to stay in the middle, leaving the entire process in limbo. Then there's the human rights question. I don't know whether you want to address that. If you do, I would have you look at those two, and then we'll take a quick look at whom you feel is on the higher moral ground, the Speaker or the President. What's your take, Dr. Osai-Kwapong?
So on the first question of the e-levy, the suits that followed, the giving of the assent to that legislation and this one, I think that is, I agree with Dr. Rashid, that is where it makes individuals, including myself, wonder whether it is really about a pending suit that is therefore informing the withholding, of the assent or otherwise, or if it is the legislation in question. And I think that is what makes things even a little more difficult for our leaders when citizens look back and find inconsistency in behavior. Now, you don't have to treat every situation the same way. But having also said that, there is a certain application of principles and consistency in behavior that, is expected. And so when there is a deviation, then it starts raising all of these questions about, well, is this really the case, or is it some other issue that is informing this? I've written about this. It would be in the Daily Graphic tomorrow. But in my opinion, I think the president
isn't what is in the Daily Graphic today, because I
actually wrote another one for tomorrow.
Oh, I
right?
see. Right.
And I think it's in my opinion, the president is in some kind of what I call a dilemma, right? He has to find a way to reconcile some of these external issues or challenges we may face because we are part of an international community, and that international community has signaled displeasure even at the fact that Parliament has passed.
But even on that point, Doc, in my blunt thoughts, I think last week or a fortnight from now, I made mention of the facts. If you look at the facts, countries in Africa, and I'm not necessarily saying we should go this or that way, but African countries that have bills on this, LGBTQ laws, including Uganda, right? Mm-hmm. And the posturing of the World Bank and the IMF. We took a look, we incisively scrutinized it. And not much has changed in terms of what they are getting financially, Mm-hmm. In fact, their tranches still keep coming and all of that. So is that any basis really to fall back on? Because the fact shows that it doesn't hold water.
Right. But again, there's that consideration, and then there's also the internal politics over the issue, right? And the president has to find a way of reconciling, the two. I mean, at least that's my read, that perhaps then the suit that is pending in the Supreme Court and the basis, and using that as the basis for withholding assent or otherwise, may be giving the president some time to sort of sort through all of this and reconcile it. But the question then becomes, if the court rules between now and when his presidency is over, if the court rules and says, yeah, the legislation is constitutional, Parliament did nothing wrong, does that mean that the president will then, give his assent to the bill or not? And that's what Dr. Rashid is raising, which is, what is the president's position on this? Will he sign it, just that he's waiting to see what the court does? Or even if the court says, yes, Parliament is on the right path, would he object to it? And that state of not knowing, when you leave gaps like that, then you leave others to fill in those gaps.
And our Constitution avoids those, because there should be no vacuum. It should be a continuum, which is why even when a president, something happens, there are structures in place, like we saw from Atta Mills to Mahama. There are structures in place to ensure that there is no vacuum created. Right. But gentlemen, we have 2 minutes to go. I want us to make the most of the time. You've not answered my question. Where do you lean more towards, the Speaker or Mr. President? The Speaker's positioning, so we're also adjourning. We're not going to deal with your ministers and all of that. Then we'll also wait for the court to rule, and then we'll get back to it. or the presidency? That's to both of you. And then again, what damage do you think this could do to our democracy? In 1 minute, I'll give the next minute to Dr. Draman, and we're gone. 2 questions for you.
Well, I like people to get along. I don't like adversarial politics. So I just hope that the presidency and parliament, particularly the president and the speaker, can resolve this in such a way that it doesn't do further damage to whatever relationship the executive and the legislature, do have. In terms of the damage to our democracy, the one thing I'm hoping we don't get to is because our partisan edges are sharpening, and I worry that those sharpened partisan edges could start affecting a whole lot of things, even including the way the executive works with with Parliament. And I hope we can avoid that.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Osai Kwapong. I'll come to you, Dr. Rashid Draman. You have the final bite on this matter, or we could say you have the final bite of the cherry, Dr. Rashid Draman.
Well, I think, look, the damage has already been done. We are a country of tit for tat. I mean, just mark it. I mean, in the next parliament, you are going to start hearing, this was done in the 8th parliament. Depending on who is in the majority and minority, this issue is going to resurface. I think in terms of the presidency, the president or the speaker, I would rather look at it this way. We have missed very important moments for building consensus and constructive relationship between the 2 arms of government. This is the moment. As we see in mature democracy, when the issue becomes very hot, that is when dialogue takes place. The presidency would have to give in some. The parliament speaker would have to give in some. And then they meet in the middle somewhere and find a way of perhaps re-establishing the relationship that should exist. Separation of powers does not mean absence of interdependence.
Right. Basically, concessions must be made. Thank you, Dr. Draman, as well, for joining the conversation. So we've had our guests, Dr. John Osai Kwapong. He's a CDD Fellow on Governance. We also had, joining the conversation, Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director, African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Now, do stay with us. We still have a lot lined up for you. Definitely, we'll also be taking you to Lagos in Nigeria for that UBA event. Before that, though, we'll bring you much talk on the Help, Your Help, My Help, Your Help Foundation. Stick and stay. We'll be right back.
Welcome back on the AM show. Now, I'm sure you've heard 1,000 times and over that the world is full of good people. If you can't find one, be one. And Michael Jackson also says, heal the world. So every day, really, we try to make the world a better place, whether it's punching holes in the, in the loopholes of our political leaders and their speeches and agenda, or aiding non-governmental organizations to achieve their mandates. We are simply trying to make the world a better place. In light of that, this morning, for the last leg of our conversation, we're going to talk about My Help, Your Help Foundation. In the studio with me is Love Owusu Champong. She's an event coordinator. And we have Archibald Colley, content manager for My Help, Your Help Foundation. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
So My Help, Your Help Foundation is a non-governmental organization. But specifically, what do you do?
Okay, so My Help, Your Help Foundation is a licensed and registered NGO. We are made up of working class professionals, and what we do is we try to raise funds internally and externally to help the poor and the less privileged in society.
Okay, when you say help the poor and less privileged society, you mean give them food or?
Okay, so as a foundation, we go to orphanages, we do community-based projects, We help, we've adopted some orphanages that we help pay their school fees, the school fees of the brilliant but needy students. So basically, we do community-based projects. We go to orphanages. We've done street feeding projects before. Okay. We've built classrooms for some communities. We even did borehole for a whole community, Techi Krom. We did a borehole for them. Yes, so that's our core mandate.
Archibald, what's the intention? Like I said, we're all just trying to make the world a better place. But why did you decide that My Help Your Health Foundation is the best way to achieve that goal? What was the intention behind designing a program like this?
Okay, so My Help Your Health Foundation is the name of the group. But what we do in line with trying to help the needy in society, we decided that, okay, it's getting to Easter. What can we do for our fellow human being? Just like Jesus Christ died to save us from our sins. So we choose to also give back to society. So we decided that, okay, out of choosing to help widows, to help orphans, prisons, let's do orphanage this time. So we put smiles on the faces of these children.
Okay. How long have you been running this organization?
Okay, we've been running it for 6 years now.
6 years? Yes. That's a long time. Share some success stories with us.
Okay, so we've done 12 orphanage projects. We visited Graceland Orphanage. We visited Porter's Village. We visited Osam prisons. Osam Krom prisons in Agona Stredu, where we did they haven't had a corn mill since 1945. But through our organization, we're able to give them a corn mill. We've done street feeding, and we do free medical outreaches too. Yeah.
So all these places that you visit, not only do you provide food and other material supplies, you also offer some sort of medical screening?
Yeah, so we do free health screening for communities and for the orphanages. So in a year, we have like different projects we do. Okay. And one of them is we either do free health screening, or we do feeding of the street kids.
Right.
So like I think last year we did screen screening for the people of Ashiama. And when we go for our orphanage programs too, we do free health screening for the children.
Okay, let's talk about this.
We also give them medication, so we don't just do free health. When there's a problem, we take medicines and stuff, so we also donate that to them.
This Easter, what are you doing?
Okay, so we are visiting Reverend Obli Foundation in Sawam.
Okay.
We had our project team visit them and then do accessibility and visibility studies. And we realized that the children of school-going age, they needed stationery. They are building up classroom unit blocks, which they need support to complete. So we are sending them some of these stationery, clothing, food items, and then also support them in completing their school block. What we do is on that particular day, on Easter Saturday, we go there, have fun with them. We played with them, face painting and all that, musical chairs, and then feed them. Right. So we dine with them, make them feel at home. And it always ends in joy and happiness.
Yeah, I can imagine all that playing out beautifully. I'm sure you need some help and support, all the support that you can get. If someone was touched and wanted to reach out to you, how would they contact you?
Okay, so My Help Your Health Foundation, our contact number is 0244 982 036. 0244 982 036. Okay. You can also reach us on our website, myhelpyourhelp.org.
Okay.
Yes. One of the reasons we are here is also to get support from philanthropists, corporate organizations, and anyone who will want to touch the heart of a child. And then we are ready to receive. We have some handles. We can use a short code *789 *3*58#.
That's a USSD code,
That's
right? Please say that. Mention that again.
*789 *3*58#.
Okay.
And
No, finish that.
Yeah, so we also have Momo Pay. The code is 272883.
Okay.
And then you can also reach out on Zenith Bank account, My Help Your Help Foundation. The account number is 60101-89241.
Okay. My Help Your Help Foundation. Love, you have a very lovely name. Love and sweetie. But in about 30 seconds, if you want to appeal to people to come on board and join you, especially for this Easter activity, you have the time to do that.
Bible says he who lends to the poor, lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his good deed. I want to encourage everyone, philanthropists, corporate organizations. We need some food items like rice, water, gari, toiletries, sanitary pads, amongst others for the children. So I encourage everyone, anyone that can give anything, be it whatever amount. Our Momo number, I'm sure, is on the screen. So either you give via our Momo account, or if you can give us some food items and toiletries, you are welcome. Our number 2 is there. You can call us. We'll come and pick it up.
Right, there you have it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I think what you're doing is commendable. So keep up the good work. And hopefully one day there'll be a world where everyone is okay and we don't really need to be supporting. What am I saying? But that's not all. Before we end this show, I want to say a happy belated birthday to Pamela Akujifa, my friend, my sister and circle member, teacher at Accra Academy. This age is a big one. I wish you many successes and ending wealth and happiness, girl. Stay blessed.